Hey, it's Kristen. If The Two Trees has been a blessing to you, please leave us a review on your favorite podcatcher or visit our website at www.thetwotreespodcast.org and click the yellow Buy Me a Coffee icon to leave a donation. And now, let's join the conversation.
Hello and welcome to the Two Trees Podcast. I am John Dillon and this is Rosemary Moeller.
This is not Rosemary Moeller. Nice try.
Aren't you Rosemary Moeller?
You have a glorious radio voice as people have, or a rich broadcasting voice, or something that everybody recognizes. So nice try.
I was introducing you like this is
I
Rosemary
thought you
Moeller.
were saying you were Rosemary Moeller.
No, I'm not Rosemary
Nobody's
Moeller.
I'm
I'm
fall
John
for that.
Dillon.
And
Get your
I'm
prepositions
Rosemary Moeller.
correct.
Welcome to the Two Trees Podcast, and this is Martin Listener.
Hey, all.
And this is Rosemary Moeller.
Hi, everybody.
And she's exasperated with me, but I
wonder
don't
why you guys
care.
aren't friends on Facebook anymore.
It's hard to
Oh,
be
my
friends
word.
with Rose.
Done.
It's hard to be friends with Rose. She will just deny
what?
your existence and just throw away years of friendship for the thrill of clicking deny.
You know what? I just thought of something.
What?
I think that we are coming up on 3 years of friendship.
Well, we would have been.
Yeah.
If
except
only
for-
you had something to keep track of how long you've been a friend.
Does it keep track of how long you aren't friends?
It's called a calendar.
a calendar.
Yeah.
Anyway, Martin, introduce our sponsor for today.
Oh, I'm glad that you recognize that we do have a sponsor for today. Yeah, another fantastic one. I know you guys have loved our sponsors because of all the love that you've given back to us on the sponsors. If you like our sponsors, comment something. Let me know. I need to know. I need validation on the sponsorship. But anyway, the sponsorship for today is Bathsheba's Roofing. Bathsheba's Roofing. They will have everyone staring.
Oh,
Is that the
awkward.
most important thing in a roofing company? Is that everybody's, staring?
I mean, I guess.
Martin's been thinking a lot about roofing
Yeah.
the last couple of days.
Oh, my
he is missing
word.
many shingles after our wind attacks the
Yeah, I
other
had a
day.
few of them fly off. Rose says, "There's a shingle on your front porch." I said, "Yeah, and I know where it used to be too. The hole in my roof." But
Doing my job as your friend,
we're
Martin.
getting that done. But yeah,
That was low.
thank you to Bathsheba's Roofing for supporting this episode.
Well, I have not a sponsor. That's Martin's job. I have a review here I'd like to read. And it says, this is from CNF0213, which sounds very cool. And they say, I've been listening consistently for about 3 months now, and I'm hooked and thankful for your efforts on bringing me closer to God. As someone who was troubled in the past, I look to the future and growing closer to Him. I'm excited for the new episodes each week, so please keep it coming. Also, note, I just bought my first Bible 2 months ago to follow along and learn the gospel through a clearer lens. I'm thankful for this podcast, for it has helped me immensely.
That's one of the nicest ones I think
It
we've
really
ever got.
is. It's humbling, too.
Agreed.
Well, we are back, and it's actually winter again. We had spring for a little bit. We had some super storms, and Bigfoot is roaming the northern plains of Ohio. It's on the news, Rose.
It was.
Yes, if it's on the news, it's got to be true.
It's got to be true. It was on the internet.
It's Bigfoot.
Blurry Creatures
It was
just
on
put
the
a
local
thing out
news
about
too.
it.
Like, yeah, it's a big deal. John and I were going to go up there, but
You and John were going to go up there?
We might still. I mean, how far could he have got?
If I friend you on Facebook, will you invite me to
No.
Squatch hunt with
how
you?
far do you think he could have gotten?
I don't know. I mean, they have big feet. They can go a long way. So anyway, we are trying to bridge the cultural divide between the modern reader and the ancient scriptures of the Bible. And really what we're doing is we've been looking at ways of storytelling and talking about big ideas using images that we don't really do this as much today, although it hasn't disappeared from our culture. And as you know, Ohio is an incredibly poetic people. They deeply resonate with pop music of all kinds. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's in Cleveland.
You are scrambling now. I already
Right
said
next
we
to
have
Bigfoot.
Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Like, I'm good to go on poetry. I think we're...
Is he in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No, he's a legit poet who lived in Dayton, Ohio, where we're from.
Oh, yeah. I'm not from here.
Moving on.
Valid.
Moving on, anyway. There are other ways that storytelling becomes, or the way that people see themselves in the world, and it has to do not just with particular ideas like an eagle or the sea, but actual stories themselves, the history of who you are, events that define who you are as a people. Oftentimes, it's through elements of struggle, like the people in America who are very patriotic. You know, they will oftentimes talk about the founding fathers. And so if you see someone walking around in a white powdered wig and a blue coat, you know, wow, that guy is really digging his history. The crossing of the Delaware or something like that. You get into more modern history and the civil rights struggle to be recognized as a full citizen in their own right and to overcome the racism. It's an empowering and a beautiful story. But those elements do more than just tell a historical event. Mm-hmm. They kind of define who you are in the wider world. Mm-hmm. Items like the Vietnam War or D-Day from pop culture, modern culture, even in the musical world, like there are certain albums that define particular artists or even time periods. And ancient cultures did this too. Famously, like we look at Anglo-Saxon, and they have Beowulf, and this was more than just a telling of a cool story. In many ways, it was the way they viewed themselves as fighters of monsters and sailors of the sea. There are movies today that are more than just a movie, but they seem to have tapped in to a deeper angst or worry or fear that people have, and they become ways of defining who we are. And this is why, you go to places and they sell merchandise from particular movies of lines or maybe on a coffee cup or something like that. And what you're doing is you're saying, this thing, this moment, this line, this reaches deep into my soul. Rose, you used to have a cup that said, "I am no man," that Eowyn quote.
Oh, yeah. But I left it in a taxi in London. So
Did you really?
I did. It sounds cooler than it was because I was mostly annoyed I didn't have my water bottle with my cool sticker the rest of the trip.
Wow. Well, I mean, what an ending to that story.
You know what I've actually always wanted, not to derail the podcast. Every time I go to see Les Mis, I want to get a T-shirt that says 24601 on it. And I never have done that.
You should.
I know, but I'm not really a merchandise person. I don't even have any of our merchandise. No, that's not true. I have a mug because you gave it to me. But
yes, I did, because I
am a great
good
host.
friend.
But John, it's an interesting topic that you bring up about the definition of yourself due to maybe your greatest work or just something that really defines what you are, like you're saying, the stories and whatnot. But it really hits me when you talk about songs. I always have a question, like when Journey sat down and wrote "Don't Stop Believing," did they say this is a top 5 song of all time that anybody across America is going to know at any given time? Like, did they know going into it that it was a defining matter? So I guess the question that I'm trying to get to here is it something that the creator of the story is trying to get to at all times and just does occasionally hit gold? Or is it the public and knowing the general culture of the time is going to be able to skew the public's opinion into making this an all-time classic?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Martin, I think we all kind of talked about this. We were over at 21 Barrels, I think it was, and we were kind of walking through songs that would be instantly recognizable and that kind of transcend their particular spot in the history chart. But I don't know. I'm not a musician, but I would imagine that aren't all musicians trying to capture something of the moment? And then there are just certain songs that, like, it was a solid, I mean, we would call them a hit, right? In the sense of like, bam, there it was. But like it not just resonated with that smaller clique, but with a much larger audience themselves.
I think the hit is an interesting topic because when you look back, like if you look at the hits from 2016, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that song. But it's not like an iconic viewpoint of something like some of these other songs are. And so when you look at it from, a biblical standpoint, there are certain elements of the culture of the day that were used to make stories more fun or more relatable or more memorable. But to stand the test of time, I think like Scripture has done, it really incorporates like the heart of what is going on. And that's something I think that we can take into our everyday life where it's like, yeah, you can be the guy that's going to say something cool and hip and fun and you'll be remembered for the day. Or can you rely on something that's going to be faithful throughout time? And so it's really neat to go through these cultural gaps and know that Jesus in the Bible wasn't just trying to be the new hit thing. He wasn't trying to make a hit for the year 32 or whatever before he died. He was trying to make something that would transcend 2,000 years later and talk to us.
Yeah, and I think so I have a problem with things that try to be trendy. I think it's a guaranteed way to look outdated, like incredibly fast. Like the more hip something is, the less inclined I am to like it. And so I'm more interested in things that look more classical, sound more classical.
I think that, like, if you turn it to books, that I sometimes a lot of modern books that are written, I think we have a problem since the advent of movies in like the cinema that now authors tend to write a story almost as if it's a screenplay. You know, like you don't really even have to use your imagination that much because all the dialogue is there, all of the scenes are laid out for you, and it's kind of like an instant bestseller because you can visualize the entire thing. To me, there's not much of a message in that story, and I usually am reading to see what's being told to me, if that makes sense. And I think that that's
But
what...
with that, you can see the evolution kind of like what we're dealing with here. When the Bible's written for the culture of the day, they understood a lot of these things. One of the things that really sticks out for me is when you say something like it was a dark and stormy night. And we recognize what that means. The same way that someone reading the Scripture 2,000 years ago would pick up on some of these items that we've talked about, like when they're talking about the sea or they're talking about this. Earlier, a couple years ago, we talked about if you put a story in Auschwitz compared to a meadow in Northern Ireland, like you're going to know that there's a difference. It's an easy contrast for us to understand. But with this season, trying to bridge those cultural gaps is saying, how can we recognize what we know today the same way when you read the Bible? Like, boom, red flag, boom, green flag.
The medium that you're using to portray this or tell this really can shape the way that cultures engage with works. There are some things in books that are incredibly frightening, but would translate terribly to television or to the big screen. And the Bible is the same way. When you read this, you can tell this is not a people who were relying on the TV to tell their stories. They were going about this in a different way.
But you can see the evolution, like I was saying, with that going from the books, writing a book the way it used to be compared to now, trying to make it a movie because you know that's where the money is. If
Well, I mean, not all, but many. When I submitted my my manuscript to Whipfenstock, there was a box that I had to tick. Are you trying to get this book turned into a movie? And I had no idea authors thought that. I was like, no, this would make a terrible movie. But like that was one of the things they wanted to know because apparently authors are doing that.
And I think one of the biggest struggles is like, well, man, how can I understand the Bible and the culture of the Bible when it takes a full-time job for me to understand the culture I'm living in right now?
That's true.
And so there's this idea of like, what kind of struggles do we face now because we don't understand the culture the same way that we did then? And so what was interfering to make it so confusing for us and all of this? But I think, again, with Rose's point, it's just mankind and their ability, like for this, it's greed. They want the money. They want to be able to make this. And so it's like mankind is creating its own entangled web to really confuse ourselves with what we're reading.
Yeah, and I think that will look different in different cultures and at different times, but the roots of it are always the same.
Agreed.
And I think it's because there is deep inside of people a desire to connect with our past and with great stories, a desire to be part of things. There's a reason that, you know, at museums and things, they put ropes up because instinctively you want to touch it. Like, oh, this is from 500 BC. I think I want to get a selfie with that.
Right.
Oh, and, you know, people are just getting awkwardly close. Or you go to something like the Vietnam Memorial in D.C., which is designed to put hands on. And it's one of the reasons that particular monument is so powerful, is because there is something inside of humanity that sees itself as not an individual, but as part of a larger whole. And so people have these sagas that they see themselves, their own story, as part of this larger story, whether it's the civil rights movement or whether it's the movement of the founding fathers in America, or whether it's something bigger, you know, like the Roman Empire as it moved into different parts of the world, or whether it's the
Sasquatch.
Yeah, listen, I mean, why not? What's happening here?
Great
There
point,
are
Rose.
massive
I
ones.
know, right?
Most recently, as communism spread around the world, the teachings of Karl Marx and how do you see yourself in terms of class and struggle, all of these things resonate regardless, and they become global in their reach because there is something inside of humanity that sees themselves this way. And so the stories of the ancient world and the characters of the ancient world were different. They didn't have the same repertoire of stories to draw out of that we do. I always think it's kind of funny when I Google or I'm searching for like books on ancient history. Most of them are about Rome, and I don't consider Rome to be ancient history. Like that's way further down the line than what I mean by ancient history. But for most people, like that's the ancient world. Who knows what was happening before then? And that's the part of history that I'm intrigued by.
For middle schoolers, last week is ancient history. So
yeah, that's true. Like Patrick asked me the other day. He saw this meme about the '90s, and he's like, Was that real? Like, and I was like, oh, yes. Matter of fact, that may be tuned down. The 80s, let me tell you about that. Now, that was awesome. But, we see ourselves as part of these grand schemes. And sometimes they're historical, sometimes they're imaginative. But traumatic events in world history, actual historical events, become part of the way that we view ourselves in our own lives as well. There's a reason that most cultures in the world have a flood story. I think it's because they went through a flood story and that it marked them as a people. Things like diseases, like the Black Death that swept across Europe and other places. These things have changed the way that we not only view ourselves, but we view our past. And so as you move further back in history, the names change and the culture's different, but you're going to find the themes stay the same, that you're not going to find that humanity has reinvented the wheel. Instead, we're relying on the same source material that ancient people were. That there's a reason that ideas like the Nephilim or giants or ghosts or monsters or gods, all of that resonates just as well today as it ever did in the ancient world. You might say it reaches way more people today. It's definitely a greater moneymaker today than it ever was then. But when we begin to look at the things that shaped them, the story itself, and where I fit in this story, becomes a way that we view ourselves. And Christianity today typically views ourselves through a very narrow lens that is about me needing to go to heaven. That really becomes what religion is about. It's about what happens after I die, where will I go, and how will God feel about me? Now, that is a part of our story, but it is not the only part of our story. And so when you introduce characters like the Sadducees, who didn't believe that there was an afterlife, so many people are then wondering, well, why were they religious at all? If it's not about me getting something to go to heaven, we don't have a category in our head that involves a religious devotion that doesn't somehow benefit me in some way. And so when we begin to look at these stories and we see ourselves as part of them, the biblical mandate is more than just a story about how I can go to heaven. It is a story about God as King of the universe, that everything that exists was made to be in relation with God, the Maker, the King, the Creator. And that the world that we're in is the product of several moving parts. First of which, the one we're most familiar with, is that of human nature. We choose good things and bad things. Go ask Abel if human nature had any impact on his life, and absolutely it did. We also have the forces of the natural world. Humanity does not feel like it is in sync with the rhythms of the world. It surprises us. People are killed in storms and floods, and there's dangers all across the world. We feel like we're not walking in a Garden of Eden, but that we're living in a place that almost doesn't care about our presence at all. Something has gone wrong between our relationship and the rest of creation. Even people who aren't religious necessarily look at humanity almost like a sickness on the earth. We're destroying it. The world is not going to be a better place because our generation was here. We are polluting and littering and destroying on a rampant rate. This is one of the things that infuriates me. I grew up in West Virginia, and it's filled with gorgeous, gorgeous places. And it frustrates me to no end that someone can walk into some of these places and just throw their garbage down. Like, why? Why would you not take the extra, a quarter mile carrying your bag and put your stuff back in your car? But because I already saw it, I'm now willing to just dump my stuff here. That drives me nuts. There's no desire to care for the thing itself. When you're reading the stories of the ancient world, though, they also saw that there was a third category. And that third category is the supernatural world, impacting the physical world. And it comes to play in stories like the chaos waters, storm imagery, all of that stuff, ways of expressing this. And so when the Bible tells the history of humanity, and that's what I believe it's doing, it does it through literature, but I believe it is recording true events. And if that's not your thing, that's okay. It's my thing, and I have the microphone. This is the story of us and the world that we're a part of. And so reading Genesis is not just a way of saying, okay, these things happened, but why is the world that I am a part of like it is? And how do I see my role in this?
Can you list again? I'm thinking, you said the natural world, the supernatural world, and the human nature.
Human nature, okay. You and me. Right. Because I think you are a spirit being, but you are clothed in flesh. You are a spirit who is impacting the physical world. And that's definitely what you make the world better or worse on a consistent basis.
Gotcha. I was just lining up that way for the rest of the talk. I can keep these categories straight.
Yeah, keep these things in your head. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to the moment where it all falls apart. It's in the Garden of Eden. We've discussed this in great detail already. Excuse me. I believe this to be a temple, a place where God intentionally dwells with mankind, a place where the Lord is manifesting himself in the physical world. And we're going to go to the part of the story where it all falls apart. There is a sacred space inside of a sacred space where there are trees, two of them, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so, Rose, if you will pick up Genesis 3 and verse 4, that would be awesome. Thank you, Martin.
But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths.
So there's a lot going on in this text.
There is a lot going on in this text.
And we're obviously not going to get to all of it, but I do want to point out the way that this is framed. In our world today, oftentimes this gets framed through the lens of a gender war. Boys versus girls. It's been going on since kindergarten, and who's allowed to play with which kids in which games. And honestly, it hasn't changed. Look at politics and all those things. This is a very real debate and a needed one that's taking place across the world. But when you look at it through this story, what you are not seeing is the way that God intended for humanity to interact with him and with the creatures around them. There is a thing that happens. She looks and sees something forbidden, and she doesn't think to herself, is this good? She asks, does it look good? Does it give me something? It looks desirous to make me wise. And she takes it, and she gives it to Adam, which, by the way, how nice of her. She is a sharer and a carer. It seems that Adam is right there. This isn't Eve messing up and then Adam being like, oh, man, I guess I'll just have to die too because Eve's already messed it up. There is a very real sense in which what Adam is doing is the punch of this story, because she's looking at it and she's deceived by the supreme deceiver. I don't know how old Eve is in this story. She may not be very old at all, but there is a moment where she takes it and she gives it to Adam. And what they are doing is they are deciding to take for themselves, to define as good what they want. And this is something that I do constantly, and so do you. I read what Scripture says, and I know I should, but in the moment, I am deciding what God should have meant. And as a biblical person reading the Bible, that's upside down. I'm not looking at the Bible as the commands of a king to his servants. I'm looking at him more as like a political officer running for election. Do I support your standards here? Or do I need to, break off on my own? And that's because the world that I live in is greatly defined by the narrative of democracy. So Adam and Eve are taking control for themselves, or at least that's what they seem to be doing. The implication is whose will rule in Eden.
When you read this passage, or when I read this passage, what is your first, your forefront emotion over the whole scene? I feel like I'm putting you guys on the spot. But
Oh, well, what's yours, Martin?
I feel like I'm putting you guys on the spot. Go ahead, Mark. The overall emotion, what I'm thinking, I think just the same idea when you're watching a movie and that the main character is not supposed to do a certain thing, but that's exactly what they're going to do. I don't know what emotion that would bring or what thought that would bring. It's almost frustration out of anywhere because you're like, this movie could be 12 minutes if you just go left instead of right. And I know for a fact you're going to the right. And so there is that aspect that goes along with it. But it's just so interesting.
Kind of like suspense, or you said frustration, intensity?
I think it's just frustration. There's always these fun, and when you look back at slapstick comedy is the big thing, because it's you can see the hoe laying there, or the rake or the garden instrument laying there, and then all of a sudden they turn and step on it, and it's okay, come on, you knew it was there, you had to have seen it, and so there's almost this anxiousness of don't do it, and smack, you're going to do it. So
I actually think anxiety is a good word.
Yeah, I think kind of anxiety would be maybe the biggest thing for it, but just because and of course we have hindsight and we have that the whole understanding, but what I was going to bring to it is the idea of the deception part of it, where there's so many times where you get changed, your perspective changes so much. After you eat 2 cookies, you're like, I'm going on a diet tomorrow, because you're not hungry, because you just ate 2 cookies. So it's diet starts tomorrow. I'm so motivated. I'm so good. And then tomorrow comes and you're starving to death and you see the same box of cookies sitting on the same countertop and you're like, diet starts tomorrow is what we're going to do. And so the perception, and that's how I think this passage happens, is when, Satan approaches the woman. The tree, I don't think the tree changes. I don't think there's a physical altercation for it or anything that happens along those lines, but there's just the implantation of this thought of why don't you decide? Why don't you be the one that's in control of the cookies and whatnot? Because the same thing happened when we went on our podcast retreat a couple of years ago. Jacob and I went to Frankenmuth and we had a humongous dinner. It was massive, and I was stuffed. And I'm like, you know what? For this retreat, I'm going to fast. And it was so easy for me to make that decision because I could not eat another drop of water without exploding. I'm going to make that decision. And then the day or two later, we went to this place, and the Deatons got the best looking pretzel bites that have ever been created on planet Earth. And the waitress passed them directly in front of my nose. And she's like, here's your delicious pretzel bites. The perspective that I had on food was so vastly different 40 hours later. But that's, again, the benefit that comes from it is being able to decide what is right and wrong, not for yourself, but throughout creation, when the temptation passes in front of you.
I love it.
And so that to me is I think the perspective changes a lot. Josh Nelson did a fantastic sermon about how Eve's perception changes through the verses of chapter 3, and it really hit home with me.
How about you, Rose?
I'm going to answer my own question.
Yeah.
I think knowing the end of the story and the story that we are all still living, I would say my primary emotion is sorrow. There's nothing really in these words that should cause anxiety or sorrow, but because of what happens, that's what's produced. I mean, this has a lot of really good things. She saw a tree and it was delicious and it was delightful and their eyes were opened. How terrifying really is that? But it says everything, And so because of that, we're getting these words here that are just, this is where it all started, and this is where we all live in. I
think a lot of people try to define what's happening here as delaying the gratification, because the gratification that she wants is boom, this is what I want. It's everything in the world to me right now is what I'm seeing in front of me. And kids do this a lot. And when I say kids, I mean us full-grown adults. We do this all the time because you shouldn't eat the bag of potato chips. You should do 5 push-ups. because you know the long-term effects of the health that it has, and you'll have extra energy if you do this, and you'll be in better shape, and all of this stuff. There's so many positive possibilities by doing the thing you don't want to do, the thing that's hard, and the thing that is tough. Call it the straight and narrow if you want to, way. But at the given time, those Doritos are looking better and better all of the time. And I'm not saying that you should just delay all of your gratification and not live your life and enjoy the things around you. Like John pointed out, all the beauty that is around us, we need to take care of it. But you know that there's so much more life and life abundant with God in the Garden of Eden than there was on that tree.
And that's the part that I want to kind of key in on here, is that what Satan is doing is not just trying to mess up Adam and Eve. He's trying to kill them. He's trying to seek their death. There's a verse in Scripture we're going to get to a little bit later, but it says that Satan is a murderer from the beginning. In Satan's mind, it's not just the idea of, why don't you do what you were told not to do? That's what you should do. And through the lens of like a little bit of temptation, what Satan is trying to do is destroy everything that is good, and the will and the plan of God. He is seeking to overthrow this earthly temple, to recruit the priests to his own side, and to bring death and destruction into this.
You can see there's a little bit of hesitancy at first with Eve. She says, like, we're not supposed to do that. So there's a hesitancy. Whenever there's something that you want to entice somebody to do, you always tell them the part that you want to happen.
Yeah, he's seeking to profane the temple and Adam and Eve themselves, to destroy them. And it's abusive. There is a power here, the Nakash, who is supposed to be a friend, and it desires your destruction. And so the very first framework here, we always view this through the lens of eat the apple or don't eat the apple. But the desires that are here are not appetite in the sense of hunger. They're appetite in the sense of Cain and Abel. I want him dead. I want to control. Those are much deeper emotions that are resident in the text themselves. And so then as I view my own self, in the most practical sense, it hits me in small ways, like dieting. Dieting hits me hard because this has been the summer or the winter of diabetes for John. And so there's so many things.
The winter of your discontent.
Yes, the winter of my discontent. And I want to break the rules. I want to eat those things. But I also recognize that there are forces arrayed against my mind that would drive me into self-destruction and the destruction of others if they had their will and their way. Go ahead.
To help prove your point about, Satan wanting death to come upon these guys, you always encourage a person by telling them what you want to happen, but in reverse. Like if you say, hey, go out there and do this, you're not going to slip and fall on your face. Everybody wants to see them slip and fall on their face, or you're not going to embarrass yourself in front of everybody. You want them to embarrass yourself because it's going to be a funny thing. Well, Satan says, you will not surely die. That's to your point. I mean, he's saying, you're not going to die or anything. Like, just do it. You're not going to slip and fall. Just do it.
This gets framed through almost a silly lens. Look how small this is, but it can have a big impact on your life. And that's true. But what you're missing is that this is not a small thing. This is the rebellion that all of our subsequent rebellions are born out of, the desire to rule it myself.
And I just want to point out that if you were, this is back to my earlier point about messages coming through story. If you were to read this like you're putting it on as a play or as a movie, there's not even a lot of action here. It's people talking to a snake. Someone eats a piece of fruit, hands it to someone else, looks down, sees that they're naked, and then sews some leaves together. Boom. But we've just spent, 10 minutes talking about 4 verses, and we are not anywhere close to done with these 4 verses.
No, there's a couple places outside of the book of Genesis that give you a little bit of a view into this. This one comes from Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 13 through 15.
For Adam was formed first, and then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing, if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control.
So what we're seeing here is Paul is talking about how human beings work together, how the genders operate together, but he gives us this really great window into the moment of the tree. What happens here is Eve does not seem to have had the same understanding that Adam did. And so when you look at this and you're tempted to fall into that narrative of, oh man, Eve messed everything up, the blame here does not seem to land on Eve. It lands on Adam. Eve is deceived. Adam, though, has walked with God, I don't know how long. He's brought into the garden. There's a sense in which Adam willfully chooses to do this. And you don't see when Eve eats of the fruit, there isn't this immediate change that takes place, but there is with Adam. It's not because he's a guy and she's a girl. It's because of the lens of responsibility and of working together. There were no humans left to deny the fruit. That was all of them. Every single human on the planet. Now, granted, it was just 2, but this is an element of the patience of God. They determined to do something. This isn't Adam, oh man, we messed up. I had no idea that this would be the consequences of it. They thought they could control it.
But if you just read,
and they could not.
If you just read what the text says, I mean, like Paul is saying that Eve was deceived. The snake is sitting there saying, like, this isn't going to happen, this whatever. You can insinuate that Eve may have portrayed the same information to Adam, but what happens is the snake says, you're not going to die, this will be good for you, you want to become like God. Eve says, that sounds fine, let me take it. And then she says, do you want some, Adam? She doesn't say, by the way, this will make you like God. By the way, you will not surely die. By the way, you will not do this. What the way it's portrayed in the text is, oh, okay, this is something that I really want. And then it's just a choice for Adam. Do you want to obey God or do you want to eat this?
Yeah.
There's no, the deception doesn't transfer through
Yeah,
Eve
is
into Adam.
not being deceptive at all. I think what Paul is saying here, she truly is swept up in a force that is arrayed against her. Adam willingly walks into this and chooses one or the other. Now, that's not a down on Eve. If anything, she comes out looking much better in this story than Adam does. She actually is modeling trust and honesty and care. She's sharing. All of those things are positive. It just happens that she's been manipulated and abused by these powers that are arrayed against her. Now, notice what happens when they eat. Instead of feeling like God, instead of controlling things, they are shamed. They no longer can see themselves the way that they were before, and they dress themselves like trees. They cover themselves in branches, and they hide. Let's look at this. It was back in verse 7. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. They invented clothing here in the sense of who are they hiding from? There's only 2 humans in the world. Are there spiritual beings that they're used to seeing around in this place? Has the glory that they were clothed in before the fall of man slipped away here? I think there's a lot of things I would like to know, but the one thing the text does let us know is that everything is not okay. When mankind chose to take control for ourselves, to make the world in our image, it left us lesser than we were before.
I have a question. It's a silly question. I don't even know if I should ask it on the podcast.
Oh, well, go ahead.
How did they know which parts of their body to cover up?
It's a really good question. And I think it has to do, again, with intimacy and with shame. Like, this is a part of me that leaves me open. This is we even call them our privacy, our private parts, in the idea of there is a sense of you only cover those because there is a sense of other people watching, or shame, or fear of abuse, or being used by others. And so this to me is telling. None of the animals are walking around like this. They've not observed this within the physical world, but it does seem, as the Bible describes the heavenly host, that it describes them as clothed in glory. And so something has drastically shifted here, and they dress themselves in the leaves of trees because that's what's at hand. That's where they are. And I know in all the stories, like, they're standing behind strategically placed bushes for this exact reason, to not shame you for looking or them for being present in this way. There is an innocence about Eden. But Adam is not a lesser character because of his innocence. He is a greater king because of his innocence. Look at verse 8, back in chapter 3.
And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden.
Keep going.
But the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. He said, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? The man said, The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree, and I ate. Then the Lord God said to the woman, What is this that you have done? The woman said, The serpent deceived me, and I ate.
So Adam and Eve, that describes them together as these two are one, they flee into the trees. And there they disguise themselves as trees. They're wrapping themselves in leaves, and they hear the sound of the Lord walking in the garden. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of text messages and phone calls
Very
here.
popular, man.
Apologies. But what they're doing is there is a manifestation of God here. This is not God appearing as just a vision. This is the Lord walking among the garden. And it uses the phrase in the cool of the day. The day gets cool towards the evening, but the word that's actually used here is the winds begin to move. And we talked last time about what people thought was happening when the winds began to move. There is presence or power taking place. And so they're in the presence of the unseen. And as it is moving around them, they are hiding, and God calls out to them. God is going to ask them a series of questions. I think there's 4 of them here. But he already knows the answer to all of these questions, so why does he ask them? Like when we view this, when God asks us to do things, it's to see what we will do. Will you follow me or not? And we're used to that because we like to think of our vote as incredibly important. We look at Adam's story here, though, and we think of him almost as a child. What kind of a doofus would just pipe right up and say where he was? Don't you know how to hide? And the question is, maybe Adam knows something that we do not know. If God speaks, you answer. There is a sense here in which Adam is not lesser than us. He is beyond what we are. And so Adam responds with the shifting of blame. And Eve's response, Eve is more genuine than Adam here is in this story. And so what you're watching is the world around Adam and Eve, their relationship with the earth and with the heavens begins to slowly unravel. Remember what Adam is. He is souled dirt. He is the earth come alive. The other things that are described in the same way as the creation of Adam are the trees. They're created by God. They come from the ground. He flees to them to hide. He dresses himself in leaves, but God speaks to him and he comes out.
So question, when she says, the serpent deceived me and I ate, what do you think she believed the deception was?
Eve's deception?
The serpent deceiving her. Because everything he says, you will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. What part of that is deceiving?
Yeah, well, it isn't true. First of all, you cannot define good and evil for yourself in a meaningful way. What you can do is decide this is right and this is wrong, but you don't have authority to make it so. And so what Satan tells to Eve is true in a way. You don't have to do what God says. You can raise your fist to the heavens and fight, but it won't change this reality that God is king and you are not. When we speak to the winds, our voices just add to the storm. When God speaks to the winds, they become still because there is a difference in kind between me and them. And so what Satan does is he's seeking their death, their destruction, and he's trying to use God as the weapon to do it so that his hands remain clean and God comes out looking like a villain in the story, especially for someone who didn't even understand what they were doing, like Eve. She is, and I know this seems childish, and in our ways, like that's a negative. In the scripture, that's a positive. You want to be like a child if you're going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so while you might look at this and be like, oh man, he's down on Eve, I'm trying to lift Eve higher in your estimation.
But John, it's kind of interesting. You were talking about in your sermon yesterday about King Saul and the fact that when he gets the plunder, his instant response is, well, they brought that stuff here. So he's diverting the blame the same way that Adam did. But then you talk about wrapping it into God.
Religion, yeah.
And he puts it in the religion. It's the same thing that they're doing here. They wrap the religion of the day, which would be tough in Adam and Eve's time to understand that. But it's the same kind of deception. And so it's almost an identical story that you see with King Saul.
Yeah, I believe, and we
so
have
on and so on.
we have an early episode, Martin. I think it was one of the first ones that you and I recorded, was about Satan's role in the Garden of Eden. He's a cherub, which means a guardian spirit. And so I believe that Satan was there to guard the tree, and he, instead of being a guardian, he becomes an abuser. She trusts him, and she says that the serpent deceived me, and I ate. She doesn't hide what she did. She isn't, like, what she's saying is true, but she's also explaining there's been an enemy at work, and it struck me. Its words have wounded me. Let's keep going. Let's look at verse 14.
I have one question before we move on from that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I have a million of them, but I'll just ask one. Does Adam answer the question correctly?
Adam is deceitful in his answer.
So if Adam would have answered the question better or correctly, would things have been different?
I've often wondered that same thing. Adam does not display remorse or repentance. He displays vindictiveness, and he displays a desire for others to take the blame for him. These are manifestations, I think, of the twisting of Adam's heart.
I've had a lot of thoughts because that episode that you just referenced a while ago, we were talking about basically the fall, and when did the fall of the supernatural happen as well? Is it prehistoric years before this, and there's this epic battle, but then why is Satan a cherub in the garden, and why is he a protective source, and then all of a sudden he's not? So, like, did the fall of Satan happen in the garden? Did it happen whatever? So we won't get into that because you can go back and listen to our episode 3 years ago on that. But the idea is, when did the fall of mankind happen? Was it when the fruit was eaten by Adam, or was it in his responses to God here in the passage that we just went through? If Adam had a repentive heart, would the fall of mankind ever happen? Because the curse hasn't come yet. The sentence hasn't come. If you look at it as a trial, there was the thing that happened. This is the arraignment, and now the sentencing is coming.
The physical thing, the fruit, becomes a vehicle for the expressing of an unseen reality in Adam's heart.
Correct.
Like when Saul, I just preached on this Sunday, but when Saul brings the animals from the Amalekites to sacrifice, he says, I brought these to sacrifice them. And Samuel says, why? He didn't tell you to do that. The animals themselves have no value except as an expression of your worship to God. Has the Lord his great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices? He says, no, it's better to listen. And so what you see with Adam is the sin of Adam it's I think, in all practical terms, they're simultaneous. He determines, I will eat that, and then he does. There is the sin of the spirit, and then it's manifest in the body. Jesus describes it this way as well. He says, when did you kill your neighbor? Well, way before you actually killed them. This process was in motion. And so what you're seeing here is the physical world, the tree, which is designed to be a blessing. Every time they looked at it, they were moved with the beauty of the tree. You also see the will of humanity. You also see a supernatural evil arrayed against them. And this is what we talked about at the beginning. All three of these powers are in motion in the human story. And mankind is not just a stalk swept in the wind. We are an active power in a rebellion against the God of the garden.
There's so many times that people will reference God of the Old Testament as being the sledgehammer of justice that just brings it down on whoever is done wrong in his eyes. But when you read, starting in verse 8, there's, like you said, 4 questions that are asked. And to me, that's God giving the grace for them to respond in a way that is repentive and necessary to gain relationship back with him. I mean, there's not just, he knew that he already ate. He knew where he was. He knew he was naked. Like, all these things he knew, and yet he's asking them to turn back to him, repent, and come back to the kingdom.
Yeah, and they're not gonna. I think this is a description of the state of Adam's heart. It's not my fault.
But it also shows the limitations of the human kind. Like we
when
can't,
walking in sin, absolutely.
we can't just turn our minds around. We need some transformative power. That's where the cross comes in. Like we need something that is a catalyst to then be able to turn and look to.
We're going to get hints of it here in a minute. We're running low on time, so let's make sure we get Rose.
No, it's fine. I was going to actually.
We're going to go as long as we want to.
Yeah, right. We're adults. We can do that.
Martin has a council meeting at 7.
That's true with other adults. Okay, so what I was going to say is similar to what you said about his attitude being that of Saul, because your question, if he had repented or turned, would that have made a difference? And I was thinking about Saul and his attitude towards the Lord and his entitlement. And then David, where, speaking of Bathsheba's roofing, where he committed his sin, and then he writes this beautiful psalm, create a clean heart in me and don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Yeah. And I think that right here is where we're seeing like both of their opportunities in their father, Adam. But it seems like Saul has taken a page out of this book and moved forward with it, whereas David was repentant and became known as the man after, or God calls him a man after his own heart.
You're right. And that's a big part of the David story, is that he is part of this redemptive arc. Not in the sense that he is the Messiah, but that the Messiah is the son of David, the son of Abraham, the son of Adam, the son of God. Those men's stories are part of how they viewed the whole. We're used to thinking of things in episodes where everyone is a standalone character. The biblical story sees it more as a tree, as all of these things interconnected to the decisions of the past.
I think, too, this is something, and I don't want to split hairs here or take too much time, but I'm curious, all the way back in the beginning passages, verses 4 through 7, Eve ate, and then she gave some to her husband, and he ate. It says, then the eyes of both of them were open. Do you think Adam was waiting to see what happened to Eve before he took his bite?
Absolutely.
I think so, and it makes
Is she
Adam
going to
look like
explode?
a real terrible human. Oh, he's willing to let her die. He didn't speak up. He didn't stand in between them. He didn't call this out as wrong. There is something in Adam that wants it. And his silence is to his shame. Like I say, the only person in here who comes remotely close to looking like an innocent party is Eve. But she should have known better. Like, she doesn't go into, like, when she's confronted with it, she has the right answer. I mean, a little bit extra of an answer, but she has the answer. Don't do that. Now I want it. And there is, I'm not trying to pull Eve above sin, because she's not, but there is a sense in which this has been used to say, see, women are the problem, or see, men are the problem. No, this is a bigger story than that. It is, humanity is fundamentally broken in our soul, and by our appetite and desire, we want to define what is right and what is wrong ourselves. That is the temptation of the Garden of Eden, and it is the same temptation that faces you and me every single day.
But it goes along with what Jesus said about when did you kill your neighbor much farther before. I mean, Adam in his heart of hearts was thinking, maybe we won't die. Why don't you try it first?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe.
Go ahead. And then nothing
We can
happens.
find a way to get what we want.
Right.
This
and
is
so I think
manipulation of God. That's what God was doing with Saul.
but I think there's almost like a
Or
giddiness.
Saul was doing with God.
A giddiness in his heart when Eve takes the first bite and he's like, oh, cool. It didn't work. Like it didn't happen, right? Like maybe
He was
this
right.
guy
You
is
shall
right.
not surely
Give
die.
me some of that. Like you can, if you look at it from that lens, you can see.
I wonder how Satan felt about that, or the Nakash.
Well, I was going to say that too. Did he know? Like, was he saying because?
No, I
What
don't
was
think he knew.
What was your primary emotion?
I
when
think
you
he
were-
wanted the death of Adam and Eve.
But he's kind of right. But he's
I mean, when
kind
you
of wrong.
think about that,
Like,
it is a murder in the heart of the temple. What would that have done to God's good creation for the priests of the garden to drop dead in its holy center?
because you feel like Satan has the most intellectual knowledge of the actual situation. Like he probably knows more than Adam and Eve about the fruit. And like, if you eat it, what's going to happen? Does he have more information, or is he just kind of free rolling it here? Like, go ahead, because it doesn't matter what happens. I know that the part of you disobeying is the rough part.
Yeah, in the end, I can't tell you, but I know he's more cunning than any beast of the field.
Right,
And
so
that,
when you put that
phrasing
together-
is interesting because it connects Satan with the creation. You're not an independent power wanting to rise above the other stars of the sky. You are a creature, same as the badgers and the penguins and Adam and Eve themselves. And so the way he's viewing himself is out of sync with his role within the larger creation. Let's go a little bit further. Let's look at verse 14.
Where are we at? Oh, the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field.
Did you catch what it called him? Livestock. You are a creature. You are not an independent power. You do not define good and evil for yourself. This isn't God, and because you get people read this like snakes were originally livestock. No, this is not saying Adam and Eve were farming snakes. This is them saying, Satan, what are you? What kind of being are you? You are not the Lord Most High. You are not one of the rulers. You are the Nakash. That's what you were supposed to do, and you have rebelled against it. Keep going.
On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
Yeah, that phrase there. You'll oftentimes hear this as people saying this is where the snakes lost their legs, and now they eat dust. That is to misunderstand this. This is not a serpent in the traditional sense. This is the serpent. This is Satan, the Nakash. We've discussed this before. But this phrase, to eat the dust, is a phrase that even the Bible uses to refer to defeated kings. You would lay down on your belly in front of the king and you would kiss the dirt. Snakes don't actually eat dirt. So the Bible isn't misunderstanding how snakes operate. But this is how you treat a defeated power. Let me show you two of these in the Bible.
Just think of the schoolyard playground. Let's race, and you're going to eat my dust, is what you say when you beat the guy in the race.
Yeah,
right?
Look at Psalm 72, 8 and 9.
May he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. May desert tribes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust.
His enemies lick the dust. This is to submit to a greater power. This is Isaiah 49, 23.
Kings shall be your foster fathers, and their queens your nursing mothers. With their faces on the ground they shall bow down to you and lick the dust of your feet. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Those who wait for me shall not be put to shame.
This is how ancient kings describe a defeated enemy. So what God is telling this being, Satan, you are defeated. What you tried to do, to kill Adam and Eve, to destroy the temple, none of this is going to go on. As a matter of fact, there is going to be war between her seed and yours. Now, this has a lot of directions it can go. If you are the kind of person who is fascinated with the Nephilim, you will have a tendency to make this only about the Nephilim. If you are the kind of person who does not believe in supernatural beings impacting the physical world, you are going to move in a direction that explains this away altogether. The answer is both. There is going to be a physical manifestation of supernatural evil in the future of the story of Genesis, but this is much bigger than just something that has to do with Genesis 6. Look at how Jesus describes this in John 8, 43 through 44.
Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies.
This is describing a movement against the kingdom of God. This is describing Satan as a father, and the kind of father that our world is very used to seeing. An abuser, a hate-filled, violent person. The way of the garden is the opposite of this. He says, you will not hear my voice. You will not see what's happening. How often is Satan described as someone who blinds or as someone who keeps others from seeing? Here, it isn't just Nephilim, these sons of the fallen watchers in Genesis 6 who are described as the children of the darkness. It's me. It's mankind itself, that we have joined another family. This is part of our thinking in the modern world because we are a people who know a ton about genetics and the unseen mysteries to the human eye. We've done a lot of studies on DNA and RNA. We know a ton about this. But ancient people viewed their nations as families. clans and tribes are the way that you described this. Pharaoh itself means the big house or the great father. The idea is that those who serve Pharaoh are part of his house, his family. And so there is a fundamental difference in the way we describe our place in the larger set of this story. We want to put it just in terms of genetics, but really it has to do with loyalty. Whose side are you on?
Well, and in this passage in John, I believe Jesus is calling them out because they were saying how God is their father and they are children of Abraham. And he says, no, that is not true. Like he walks them through this passage, and what they believed was their identity was the lie. And that's essentially all the way back at the beginning of Genesis 3 that we were reading is the same thing.
That's right.
It's a deception, and it's a self-imposed deception on their part.
And so I think what you just said, Rose, it's a self-imposed deception that honestly we can fall into as well. But the more I know about how the ancient authors talked, the more clearly I can see this put forward in the text. When I know that this book isn't written with my worldview in mind, that it isn't just talking about the world as I understand it, but that these other generations that came before me aren't nameless, unimportant people in a movie about me, but they are part of the story of God. It changes the way I view this. Now, Adam and Eve should just drop dead. God should be done with them, and they move on, and he recreates. I mean, he can turn dirt into human beings. It's not as though he's limited in power. Look at what he does with Adam and Eve. Let's look at verse 16, back in Genesis 3.
To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you.
You're going to notice a repeated word in both Adam's consequences and Eve's, and it's the word pain. You tried to control the situation, and you failed. You have brought about a deep wound, and you will feel the pain of this.
What was her pain in childbearing before this?
No idea. She never had a child. Instead, what you see is, and I think this is more than just about the physical act of giving birth to a child. How many mothers have wept over how their children turned out? How many mothers have watched children walk away into evil? There is a deep, abiding wound that is possible in family. This isn't just saying, Eve, because you sinned, it's going to be real hard for you to have a baby. I got news for you. I've seen childbirth. I was there for both of my children, and in no universe does that look comfortable. But this is saying, listen, what's going to happen to you? It's your pain is going to come through childbearing. There is great sorrow that awaits you, Eve, because of the decisions that you've made here today. In pain, you shall bring forth children. So yeah, is there pain in physical childbirth? Yes. Is that the only pain that she's going to have? The answer is no. Because Adam and Eve are going to be placed in what we're going to call their stereotypical roles. Adam is working in the fields and Eve is working with the family. Which one of them brings pain?
Both.
Both, in different ways, but equal sorrow.
Question, are we going to try to wrap this up, or are we going to extend this into next week?
Can you give me 5 more minutes?
I can give you 5 more minutes, but I have a question,
Yeah,
and
go
I
ahead.
don't want to drag this out. Back up in 1 Timothy, it says, yet she will be saved through childbearing. What do you believe that means alongside what the Lord is telling her now?
Yeah, I believe that also that thing that brings about the greatest pain in a mother's life also brings about their greatest joys. And honestly, it led to the birth of Christ. It's going to lead to infinite glory as your children, I pray, are around you in the world that is yet to come. And so I don't see these as frozen in time, just descriptions of how awkward it is to have a baby, but as part of a much larger discussion of what God is saying about what it means to be human. And so ultimately, yes, it leads to the birth of Jesus, but there is tremendous joy in a mother's heart or a father's heart to see their children do well and walk in goodness and glory. And there's a pride that is hard even to explain when they do even silly things. It brings me way more joy. But I don't get that same feeling about my wife. Like right now, my son is 2, and when he does things, they're cute. If I do them, my wife doesn't look at me and say, I'm so proud of you. good job, John. You did it. You did it. And everyone claps. There is an innocence and a joy that's present in children that isn't possible to be celebrated in any other way. There's a reason that people get really excited about new babies, but they get excited about new boyfriends in a totally different way. There's a different emotion altogether being touched here. So I don't think this is saying, women, if you want to have a better life, have lots of kids. Instead of what I think this is saying is, if you want to have the life that God intended you to, it can't be a self-focused life. Whether you have children of your own or you're adopting or you're just a great neighbor or a sister or whatever, you are going to find both great pain and great joy outside of yourself. This is not about seeing the tree and taking it for yourself, but about being a tree and growing fruit for others. Someone out there is going to hear this as sexism. I pray that that's not what you're seeing.
But that's what I was going to ask is like, is the curse said to Eve almost to both? We've mentioned a lot. We've talked a lot about how
The
they
two
were
are one.
correct, right? And so there's this distinction, I think, just of different aspects of life, not because you are one or the other, but in all of mankind's life, they are going to experience the pains of childbirth, not giving birth to a child, but the chains of...
And the idea that Adam wasn't helping with the children is silly. In the same way that the idea that Eve wasn't helping on the farm is also silly. But the desire, the preeminent pull of the human heart is going to be greater for a man in one direction and greater for a woman in another.
Yeah, and I didn't physically pop out a child, so I can't speak to the pain, although I'm sure it was excruciating.
But you have had a cold.
Exactly. I had to sleep on the dad bed that same night. That was rough in the hospital. But again, it's still the idea that, like, as a human being, as mankind, we can experience the pains that come with, I would say, child rearing is probably the most common term, but the building up of a child in the way that they should go, and when they don't or when they fail.
Yeah, childbirth is often a way of talking about all of life. Like Job says, it would be better that I wasn't born. Well, I mean, that wasn't a terrible day, was it? I mean, what he's saying is, like, what's happened since then is not worth the pain that I'm bearing now.
Right.
And you'll see this way of talking about birth as a way of talking about life in general. Eve is given her name, the mother of all, because she's giving birth. She is the source from which life is coming.
Well, and you know that Mary, in her Magnificat, she talks about leaping for joy, like her soul. But then when Simeon prophesies over her, he turns to her and says that a sword is going to pierce your soul, or your heart, too.
That's exactly right.
So the sorrow and the joy that goes together with being a mother or a father is all there, and
That's
I feel
right.
like that's maybe what's wrapped up here in what she's being told.
And if you think about it in a way, Eve is her description is higher in terms of what's happening, because a child is a new soul. It is a greater magnitude than what Adam is doing. Adam's pain is going to come from the earth up. Eve's is a totally different style of humanity than what a man is capable of thinking. And so if you wrap this all up and you just say, this is why it stinks to have a baby, you have really missed so much of the direction that this passage is talking about. And look at how it ends here. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. This is a breaking down again of trust in the home. Your relationship with Adam is now broken. Both Adam and Eve reap pain. The fundamental ability for the two to be one is shaken. The consequences are spoken to the individual, but they are a pair. That word there for desire is only used 2 times in the whole Bible. The other time it's in Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs. There is this before we're talking about Adam and Eve like cohesive parts of a whole. Now there's strife, desire to rule over, this desire to push beyond. You're seeing a broken family.
And I think that's important to know because, like...
Before we do that, what is the very next story in this is the broken family. Is Cain and Abel, 2 of the same, and yet one is violent and murders the other. Go ahead.
But again, just if you look in Genesis 2, it talks about how they are basically the same. And they came from the same dust. Eve came from the rib of Adam. And so there's this idea of the whatever, they're together, as you would be in like a perfect relationship or in a perfect marriage. And we don't think of Adam and Eve that way. We think of them as 2 completely separate things that are there, but they are...
Because that is our story today.
But they're merged. And when you realize that they are merged, then what is happening here separates the 2.
And the further you can push them into oneness, the more holy things appear to be. When the two walk as one, that is a positive.
Why?
When they are at odds with each other, you have two independent wills trying to impose its will on the other.
Why does Paul talk about the church being of one mind,
Yeah, the same thing.
of one spirit, of one body? That it's the same idea. You're trying to merge yourself back to how it was before the fall.
Let's take a look at Adam, verse 17.
And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return.
Well, why in the world is the physical world cursed? What do they have to do with it? That's what Adam is. He is the keeper of the garden. He is ensouled earth. Just as a mother and her child are one and yet not, Adam and the earth are one and yet not. He has a doom placed on him, and the source from which he sprang shares it. This earth is described as groaning until the Messiah comes, until the redemption story is complete. In pain you shall eat of it, meaning that just like when a mother gives birth to a child, it doesn't go real smoothly. Even the raising of the child doesn't go really smoothly. What happens to Adam's relationship with the physical earth? It's no longer smooth. But in the Garden of Eden, where did they get food from? Wherever they wanted to. Like, there seems to have been a relationship between humanity and the physical earth that is missing now. And so there is a curse upon the earth because there is a curse upon man. The two are expressions of the same. It will work against you like thorns. What happens when you reach, this isn't saying like all of a sudden everything grew thorns, in a way of saying like now the will of the earth, if you want to think of it that way, and the will of the farmer are not aligned. It will work against you. The natural processes through which the world is spinning, you are out of sync with this, Adam. And even the secular world around us looks at humanity and then at the natural order of the world and thinks, yeah, that one of these things is not like the other one. Like, we kind of seem to be an odd man out in this flow of information. Did you have a thought, Rose?
I did not. I was going to point out that Martin has a council meeting to get to.
I will wrap it up. I would love to talk to you guys. Let me give you a couple verses to read. Go to Hebrews 4:14 through 16 and Revelation 22, verses 1 through 5, and we will talk about them on another day, because Jesus is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, mighty and awesome. And Martin will be on time for his council meeting.
Yes. Run.